Shane Stacks on the radio.
Oh, yeah. I love that.
Shall we play a game?
Why, yes. I believe we shall.
Oh, I got a live one here.
Getting geeky in Little Rock, and this week pre-recorded from Little Rock, it's Shane Plays Geek Talk, a journey into the things we love. I'm your host, Shane Stacks. Thanks so much for tuning in. I love you all. So glad to have you. Welcome back to a journey into the things we love, where we have fun and get geeky and all that cool stuff. Returning to the show this week, no stranger at all. I think this is his third or fourth time on, is Russ, a.k.a. Morrissey of Ian World and Morris's unofficial tabletop news and Morris's unofficial tabletop RPG talk, both a website and a podcast, and swiftly becoming the mogul of a publishing empire that is sure to take out Modifius within any day now. So is Russ, welcome back to the show.
Hello.
Hello, that is his trademark. Hello.
Is that Shane Stacks?
It is.
Oh no, radio show Shane Plays.
That's right. Shane Stacks' very own Shane Plays. So anyway, thanks so much for making the time. It's in the evening for you. It's early afternoon for me. But this was sort of a time sensitive show. Wanted to get it out as quickly as possible because you have a quick Kickstarter that is going to be ending very soon. So I'll be getting the podcast version of this out much earlier than normal. Before we get into all that, Russ, I wanted to talk real quick and update our listeners. This isn't the first time we've talked about your main RPG system on the show. I want to kind of remind people about it, and please tell us about WOIN, aka What's Old Is New.
Right, so WOIN is a new kind of plant-based fertilizer. Oh no, wrong.
Wrong show. Yeah, the Home and Garden show is, I think, on Sunday afternoons. I don't know.
No, so WOIN, What's Old Is New, is a 3-part RPG system with hardcover books for fantasy, modern action, and far future sci-fi role-playing games. It powers the Judge Dredd and the Wars of 2000 AD RPG, and it's got a whole bunch of settings with it, like the Dark Decade, which is kind of Buffy in New York in the 80s, and SolSpace, which is one which is coming out next week. There's Spirits of Manhattan, which I believe you've run yourself, which is nothing at all to do with that well-known 80s movie.
No, it has nothing to do with it has nothing at all in common with a movie that starts with Ghost and ends with Busters. Nothing at all. Nothing, not at all. No, because they're the Ghost Breakers, right? They're the Ghost Breakers.
Yeah, different. Completely different.
Totally. And I've run both Judge Dredd and Spirits of Manhattan, and it's a heck of a lot of fun. So WOIN is What's Old Is New, WOIN for short. It's a system over a setting. And it's
a toolkit kind of system.
Right.
So you're encouraged to create your own setting. So the core rulebooks don't have a setting.
Right. But the core rulebooks do have, you have O.L.D, which is sort of fantasy, or is could be used for fantasy, but it's old. It's older stuff. You have New, which is the sci-fi stuff, and then you have Now, which is like modern action kind of.
But it's kind of more 80s. Those 80s TV shows, even Knight Rider and
right.
James Bond at the time, and all that sort of stuff, or Arnold Schwarzenegger's stuff, and it's all that.
Right, and it's not rules-lite, but it's pretty easy to use in my opinion. It's a dice pool system. You have a target number and off you go. So
I'd say it's lighter than D&D 5th edition.
I'd say so, but it's not. I mean, compared to like Fate or a narrative game, it's crunchy. Yeah, I mean, it's not a narrative system at all. You basically add in you have a skill number you need to hit, or a check number you need to hit. You take an attribute and a skill, add them together. You may get some bonuses or negatives, and you roll your dice and either hit it or you don't.
Yeah, basically, and everything just hinges off that.
Right, and it's a lot of fun. Yeah, like I said, I've played. I've said before, I think even on your podcast, when you've invited me graciously to co-host, that in the past year or two, I mean, I love my weekly game of D&D, but as far as just giggling and having fun and just, a good time, Judge Dredd and Spirits of Manhattan were the 2 sessions, one shot. Yeah, it's so much fun.
I love running that too.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. But you've got xenomorphs. You've got a lot of stuff out there for a quote unquote small publisher. You've got a lot of resources available for this.
A very, very small publisher. Employee wise, there's me and there's 2 part-time employees.
But the amount of resources available for WOIN already is quite strong, in my opinion. There's a lot of cool stuff out there. So.
Because I'm like obsessive. I work 24/7 on things that nobody ever asked for,
but here you go. So, but anyway, and I want to give you a chance to promote 2 other things real quick. One, you do have your weekly podcast with your co-host Peter Coffey, that is ably edited and all that stuff by Daryl Mott.
Who was on your podcast, your radio show last week?
Last week, that's right. We talked about Shadowrun, but we went into the setting and the lore, whereas you did, I think it was episode 64 of your podcast, and I put that in the show notes actually, where you and Peter, Daryl, did sort of a review of Shadowrun 6th edition. So I purposefully kind of leveraged my show as a companion, like going into the setting and lore rather than rehashing the cool stuff you guys already did.
Darryl really knows his stuff.
He loves some Shadowrun.
He's a proper expert.
Yeah, he really is. Yeah, he tried to poo-poo that on the show, but no, he's a proper expert. I think we agreed to say armchair scholar, but I think he's a little bit more than that. So anyway, so go check that out. That was last week's show. Been wanting to do that for a long time, so I was glad. And I like Shadowrun. I think Shadowrun's just a crazy setting and system, and there's a lot of richness there. But anyway, so you have your podcast, Morris's Unofficial RPG Talk. Did I get it right?
No.
RPG News.
You missed out tabletop.
Tabletop. All right, say it. Man, say it. Say it for us.
I can't do it.
Morris's Unofficial Tabletop RPG.
Morris's Unofficial Tabletop RPG Talk.
And that is a podcast that, as far as I know, it's one of the only ones that is just news. Or not, it's not just news, but it focuses heavily on RPG news, and then you'll have a topic of the week. But you'll spend a good half the podcast going over the news.
Yeah, I mean, there's other ones there's a couple that just do specifically Pathfinder news or something, but there aren't. I don't think there are any general, broad spectrum. So what I mean, broad spectrum.
Yeah, you cover it all.
RPG news podcast other than ours. If there is, then I don't know about it.
You also cover when Wizards of the Coast announces that there may be a news announcement or an announcement of a news announcement. We're announcing that there may be an announcement of a teaser of an upcoming news item. You also make sure to cover that with with alacrity,
with all due
respect. Although I think is the. I think the Baldur's Gate 3 stuff is streaming now or something. I thought I saw it. I thought I saw a headline of that. So moving on, one other thing I wanted to give you a chance to tell people about, in addition to WOIN, What's Old is New, your main RPG system, you also have Simply 6, which give us a quick, a simple description real quick of Simply 6.
That is a really, really, really tiny, simple, really... very about as rules-lite as you can get while still having rules. RPG system, which I just wanted to see if I could, because I'd written What's Old Is New, which is comparatively, compared to that at least, it's sort of in the D&D 5th edition scale of crunchiness. And everyone kept on saying, "Oh no, it's much harder to write rules-lite games." I don't think it is. So I thought I'd give it a try. And so I wrote one in about an afternoon, and I published it. And I've tried it out a few times, and it works really well, and I really like it. It's sort of, like a what's the size? Half-size book. It's a small book.
Right, digest or whatever.
Smaller than digest. It's like a normal paper book.
Yeah.
Size, whatever that is.
So if somebody's looking for the minimum RPG that has rules, barely. And just to check it out, and it's quick to play and all that stuff. So
yeah, the rules I think are like 1 page, and you can learn them in a minute, I reckon.
Yeah, just super quick. All right, we're going to pull up our main topic today, the SolSpace, which is a setting for WOIN, What's Old is New. And then there's an adventure within that setting called the Spartan Gambit. And that is going to be the majority of what we talk about today. Morrus is very excited about this. It launches, is it March 3rd? When does it launch?
Yeah, March 3rd on Tuesday, and it lasts 1 week only. Like you said, it's a quick starter, so it ends the following Monday.
All right, well, I will do my best. I normally drop my podcast on Thursday. I actually got it out on Wednesday this week, last week's show. I will do my best to drop the podcast version of this show on Tuesday to match the launch date.
I mean, if it does come out on time, I'll try and whack it up on the Kickstarter page as well.
Okay, super cool. And I'm not going to steal your thunder because you love to say this. SolSpace is... the Spartan Gambit is...
Is... you're looking at me.
Die hard.
Wigging is your way back.
This is your big chance.
Yeah, so this is basically, if you get like Captain Kirk and you get John McClane and they somehow have a love child, what do you end up with?
Die Hard on a spaceship.
Die Hard on a spaceship, yeah, exactly that. So basically what happens is you're on this big exploration cruiser, which is nothing at all like the Enterprise.
Not a lick, no.
Nothing like it. And you're down on an away mission, just doing these scientific studies of flora and fauna on this planet block. And while you're down there, you're like a small sort of science team.
Almost, but nothing like an away team, but kind of, possibly. Yeah. You're a team that is away on somewhere. Yes, right.
Away somewhere. And then a bunch of Spartans, which are nothing like Klingons at all.
Well, I mean, as Peter pointed out so ably recently, they're called Spartans, so they're obviously not Klingons.
They take over the ship, Hans Gruber style.
Yes.
So when the PCs return to the ship, they find that the ship is now under Spartan control. All of the crew have been either transported to the Spartan ship or are locked up or whatever. And the PCs and all the power's down and everything. So the PCs have to climb up lift shafts and crawl through engineering ductways and pick off the Spartans one by one to try and get to the bridge and take out the Spartan commander. While also dealing with the fact that in the science labs there are a bunch of dangerous monsters and containment fields for study.
Yay!
A xenomorph.
Yay!
A nanobot swarm. And some shatter plants. A carnivorous plant. A whole bunch of stuff. Well, because the power's down, they've all escaped.
Yay!
So they're all wandering around the ship too. And it is literally Die Hard on a spaceship.
I love it. So, and... I don't know if ships in the Allied Union of Worlds, which is the setting or part of the setting, have warp cores or not, but is there something that might breach if something isn't done in time?
An antimatter reactor.
Yeah. Could it possibly rupture?
Not only that, it has bombs placed around it.
Yes.
The Spartans have placed bombs around it.
Yes.
Just to make things a little more difficult.
That sounds like a heck of a lot of fun. So you're trying to, after your team has been away, they return and find that is it the USF Copernicus? Yeah, the United Space Force Copernicus has multiple problems. It has a Spartan problem, but it also has rampaging monsters problem, and it has bombs around the antimatter drive problem.
And the power's off problem.
And the power's off. So does it? What's like in because SolSpace again is a setting, and so if people back this Kickstarter, which I hope they do, then it not only are they getting the adventure, but they're getting some setting information, right, for a futuristic setting.
SolSpace has actually existed for ages, but not as a sort of its own book. So it's been the sort of implied default setting of a whole bunch of books that have come out over the last couple of years, like the Galactic Sentience Catalogue, which has like 60-odd alien species you can use for your characters. And there's the Starship Recognition Manual, which has like 60-odd, starships that you can use. A whole bunch of adventures and stuff. So there's a whole load of stuff. This is a book that actually gives you half the book tells you what SolSpace is, and describes the Allied Union worlds, the Union Space Force, and all that stuff.
Which is not the Federation, but
Not
it is
at all.
not at all. But it is you could say that it is a federation of worlds that came together under the name Allied Union of Worlds.
Well, think of it more like the United Nations.
Oh, okay.
So it's not one political body. Like, everyone's still got their own sovereignty still.
Right.
Then you've got the United. Well, imagine the United Nations, but the United Nations has a bit more teeth and has its own military.
I got you. And I think if people hear the delicate sound of prancing, that is Hudson the Wonder Dog. That's the
Dog.
that's the ASBOdog, the mascot of EN Publishing. Hudson, who's dancing around. Hudson is often a guest star on your podcast, Morrus.
Deliberately so.
I still say we should just do like we talked about that one time. Just do a podcast called "What is Hudson Doing?"
Yeah.
And people would tune in.
The next time we do a video one, if we do another video, I might invite Hudson on, but that does mean there'll be wires and things around and microphones and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's a fun for the viewers, but maybe not so much.
Survive contact with the enemy.
So while I was editing after we recorded, I realized that listeners couldn't actually hear Hudson prancing around, but I left that bit in anyway, because frankly, I like Hudson. Everybody likes Hudson. He's a happy ASBOdog. Now, one of the things that I've heard you say about SolSpace that maybe sets it apart from a lot of other science fiction settings is every star is based on a real star. Is that right?
Yeah, so I delved into proper astronomical data, and when I mapped SolSpace, every single star on there, apart from one, there was one fictional one I had to add for reasons, but apart from that, they're all real. They're all names, they're actual names. So what I did is I only include stars. Do you know a lot of stars are just things like, I don't know, UB496 or something. I didn't include those because they're boring stars.
Right.
No one wants boring stars. But any star that has an actual name is on that map. And so it's a real star map.
Well, you know what I'm going to do. You know those those services that will the International Star Registry or whatever, where you pay them to name a star after you. Yeah, I'm gonna have stuff like Shane is the Overlord as a star, and then maybe which system are we going to? The Shane is the Overlord system. All right. So you always seem excited about the products you're putting out. Okay, but this one you seem like really super excited. So what is it about this one that just excites you so much? Because you've pre-chattered probably more about this. Judge Dredd you pre-chattered a lot about, but this one you just seem really excited about. So what is it about this one?
So one of my biggest sort of gaming influences, and it's influenced not just the games I like to play, but also the games I design, including the What's O.L.D Is N.E.W system, is, do you remember Fass's Star Trek game?
Absolutely.
Okay, I love that game. Absolutely love it. I've got every single book for it upstairs. some of them multiple copies. I've got this Starship Combat Tactical Simulator box set.
Nice.
I've got all the ship recognition manuals. I've got, all the books about Klingons and Romulans and the whole lot. I got them all. And
it did a wonderful job of creating the feel of the original series in a role-playing game.
Yeah. And I'm a massive Star Trek fan as well.
Mm-hmm.
And this, I guess, has just been in me since I was a teenager. This has been waiting to come out, basically. And this is basically my sort of tribute, I guess, to that 1980s Star Trek game.
That's cool.
But with more modern rules and more modern production values, and there were issues with that game back then. Some very sort of clunky, clumsy stuff, and I seem to recall that the actual core resolution mechanic was never actually explained anywhere in the core rules. That's kind of it.
I had the second edition, I think, and I remember I bought another copy of it recently, within the past couple of years, and I was flipping through, and I was like, okay, where's the Starship Combat? And the Starship Combat, the entire thing was one paragraph that said, go buy the Star Trek 3 The Search for Spock combat game, and that's the Star Trek. And I was like, what? Which was funny because back in the 80s, I actually had that Star Trek 3 Starship combat game and played it, and it was a lot of fun. It was like a dumbed down version of Starfleet Battles. Okay, so, we're kind of tongue-in-cheek, like, oh, it's not the Federation, it's not this, and I don't want to imply that you're infringing on any IP because you're not, but...
I haven't used a single word.
Right, not a single word.
From any IP. No.
But for Star Trek lovers, or lovers of that style of sci-fi, there'll be a lot here for them, you think?
Yes, absolutely, okay. Yeah. Think about, what's it called? What's it called? Seth MacFarlane's thing.
Orville.
The Orville, yeah.
Orville is brilliant. I love the Orville.
Yeah, so that's not Star Trek. You could definitely see that it's a love letter to Star Trek.
It is it's absolutely spiritually Star Trek. I've actually done entire shows on the Orville versus the current Discovery, comparing them. This is my personal opinion, and I always have to preface this, whatever you love. If people love Discovery and all, love it. If you love JJ Trek, love it. But I my Star Trek itch gets scratched more by the Orville than by Discovery. Because there's a feel to it, and I really like it a lot. That being said, I watched the first episode of Picard, and I thought that was wonderful. And now there's rumors kicking around they're going to do a Pike show. Pike on the Enterprise, which I heard that was a real highlight of season 2.
It really was.
Yeah.
It really was. He was perfect. What's the guy's name?
Anson Mount. I was actually kind of glad he got that part because he was Black Bolt in the Marvel. I can't believe it's not the Eternals. It's the Inhumans. And he actually did a really good job, but the show itself was not good. So, I was glad that and it got panned and attacked and all that. And then he turned around and landed with a major role because Pike, even though he's had just a little bit of screen time, Pike's a pretty big figure in Star Trek lore.
Yeah, I think in that show, if you wanted to cast Kirk, maybe he's slightly too old to be Kirk, but at least in that era, he would have made a perfect Kirk. He's a little older. He makes a perfect Pike. See, Kirk is in the model of Pike.
Well, I've heard nothing but good stuff about how they did Pike in the Enterprise in Discovery. One of these days I'll go back and revisit. It hasn't enticed me enough yet to pay for CBS All Access, but I'll watch it eventually.
On Netflix over here, so
there's a lot of Star Trek out there. I like the JJ Trek as action movies, right? It's not I don't think it's good ongoing Star Trek narrative storytelling with character growth that we get in the series and all that, but they're fun action movies. That being said, I wouldn't mind if they went back to more traditional kind of Star Trek storytelling.
Well, Star Trek for me is the original series movies 2, 3, and 4 are peak Trek for me. That is, if you had to lose everything but those 3 movies, I'd still be okay, I think.
Wow, those are excellent. I mean, as far as the movies go, those are hard to beat. Really hard. I like Generations only because of the time in my life when I went to see Generations.
Yeah.
I have fond memories, so that it's all enmeshed in with that nostalgia of that time.
Like going out like a chump.
Yeah, I don't think they did Kirk well. I would have. There was a book that came out at the same time by Garfield, Judith and Garfield Reeve Stevens, that do really good Star Trek writing, and it was called Federation, and it also told a story of the Kirk Enterprise and the Picard Enterprise, which I thought was much better. But anyway, it's got good stuff in it. But yeah, I think Kirk kind of went out kind of weird compared to his preceding history. But anyway,
it's so sad seeing all those people die now. Anyway,
yeah,
I mean,
it really is.
There's only a couple of them left, aren't there? It's, Shatner, Nichelle Nichols, and Walter Koenig. Is that it? Or George Takei.
Yeah, George Takei is still out there. Yeah, and Nichelle Nichols is evidently. She's got some issues. She actually came through here a couple of years ago, and one of my friends got to kind of be her helper at a con all day long, and he's got wonderful memories of that. So, but yeah, and she's still a big draw because she came in, and the con she came to. I mean, the minute she was announced, like suddenly everybody wanted to be there, and all the news wanted to be involved, and all that. And I want to give a shout out. There's a lot of good Star Trek comic books out there right now. A lot of my Star Trek itch is also being scratched. IDW does some pretty good Star Trek comics.
Do you know what there isn't? Really good Star Trek video games.
There really isn't. I don't know why that is. There's a few out there that people love. 25th anniversary people seem to love. Not Judgment's Rights. There was 25th anniversary. There was Starfleet Academy. There's a few out there that people hold up, but for the most part, they haven't had really good.
Star Trek Online thing, which I did try, but
it's okay. I mean, I'll tell you, they've gotten better over the years at adding in more storytelling, and they get a lot of the actual Star Trek actors to come in and do voice. So it's gotten better. I will say they're working really hard to add as much
into sort of grindy, and I did play it for a bit, and all those landing party missions, they all seem so similar, and I was so bored of them.
Well, that's what I said. I feel like that. How many years ago was it that you tried it?
Oh, to be fair, yeah.
I feel like they've got. I'm not saying it's still like a perfect experience, because an MMO is always going to give a certain kind of experience that is going to lack when you're looking for a super rich single player.
Walk around the ships yet?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
You could walk around the bridge, and I think like a ready room.
Engineering or something. Yeah, there you can walk. It's been a while since I played, admittedly. I'm going to do Star Trek video games. Let's just do it. Now you got me peaked to go.
I would love to be able to walk around a USS Enterprise. Like someone built it. Do you know what I mean? And you could walk around the entire thing. That would be amazing.
I know they've added to it. So let's see here. And speaking of games, there's a fan project where they have the Orville interactive experience.
Oh yeah?
Where you can walk all over the Orville and do all kinds of crazy, and it's done really well. I'm trying to have them on the show one of these days. All right, I'm looking at, of course, there's the classic Star Trek. I mean, this was back in the 70s or 80s where you had like the little asterisk and it was like it was the Enterprise versus like a Klingon ship, and that was a classic kind of space war game. Let's see, Net Trek. I haven't played that. I know that there was a 25th anniversary game that was considered really well. A lot of people, they're 1992 Star Trek 25th anniversary. Judgment Rights, I think both of those were considered fairly well. There's an adventure game, Star Trek Next Generation of Final Unity, that does all right. Starfleet Academy was a lot of fun, but that was more like a shooter. And then Armada, I don't know if you ever played Star Trek Armada or not, but that was a real-time, it was almost like a Command and Conquer, but with Star Trek ships. And then Voyager Elite Force was pretty fun. That was a shooter. And they've got Starfleet Command is basically the computer version of Starfleet Battles. I don't know if you ever played any Starfleet Battles back in the day.
Years ago,
Okay, so off of Star Trek video, and I'm sure people are going to be like, how could you not mention, feel free to send
Shane.
Yeah, Shane Play, ShanePlays, and I will take my lumps for not spontaneously mentioning your favorite Star Trek game. There's a ton of them. Looking on this list, there's a lot more than I remember. So let's get a break in real quick, and we come back, talk more about the Kickstarter itself and SolSpace and the Spartan Gambit. Okay. And all that with Morrus, the creator of WOIN, What's Old Is New RPG, and the upcoming SolSpace, the Spartan Gambit RPG, or not RPG, Kickstarter adventure and setting.
Comic book lovers, visit thewildstars.com today. From the mind of author and comic book industry expert Michael Tierney, it's not just a comic book, it's a comic book novel. The Wild Stars is sci-fi and so much more. Learn the explanations behind UFOs and space gods. This isn't the Twilight Zone. This is the region of the Milky Way galaxy known as the Wild Stars. We guarantee you've never read anything like it. The complete comic book novel took 20 years to tell, with one reviewer noting, the story of the Wild Stars stretches ambitiously across space and time, from small-town murders to the destruction of planets, with every event given multiple layers of meaning. If you haven't read The Wild Stars, you're missing out. Visit thewildstars.com today.
Are you a fan of thrilling adventure, daring suspense, and just a touch of romance? Cursova has you covered. Since 2016, Cursova has been publishing the very best in contemporary fantasy and science fiction, retro pulp, and for you D&D gamers, Appendix N style fiction. Based in Little Rock, you can pick up their flagship magazine locally or at Michael Tierney's The Comic Book Store on Treasure Hill Road or Collector's Edition on JFK in North Little Rock. Swing by one of Michael's stores and pick up an issue or find them on Amazon. CIRSOVA, doesn't start with a K, it starts with a C. CIRSOVA, Cursova Magazine. Check them out today. I want to go ahead and throw out some love to Game Goblins. Some goblins are your friends. Game Goblins is Central Arkansas's premier retailer of Magic the Gathering, Warhammer 40k, board games, card games, RPGs, miniatures, and hobby accessories. Call Game Goblins at 501-224-GAME or visit them online at gamegoblins.com. That's 501-224-GAME or gamegoblins.com. Conveniently located 1121 South Bowman, right on the corner of Bowman and Canis in West Little Rock, and staffed by friendly employees, Game Goblins has expanded their store size, and there is plenty of room for exciting inventory and tables for play space. You'll like that space because Game Goblins has gaming events every day of the week. For all of your gaming needs, I heartily recommend Game Goblins. Make sure to check out their customer loyalty program that rewards you based on your actual purchases. Game Goblins earns your business and keeps it. First-time customers, mention Shane Plays and receive $10 off your purchase of $50 or more. Tell them Shane Plays sent you. And folks, if you do visit any of my sponsors, please tell them that you hear about them on the show. That helps them know that their advertising money and the relationship we've built is time and money well spent.
Shane Plays Radio is blessed to have sponsors, and we appreciate them very much. However, did you know that you can also support the show as an individual for as little as $1 an episode? Simply go to patreon.com/ShanePlays.
Hey, welcome back to Shane Plays Geek Talk, a journey into the things we love. I'm your host, Shane Stacks. We're joined by Russ Morrissey, a.k.a. Morrus, of Morris's unofficial tabletop RPG news. Did I get it right?
Yes, you did.
Yes, the website that a lot of people also know as EN World. Then he has a related podcast, and he's also got a RPG system that we're talking about today. Wanted to throw out some quick show notes for folks out there. If you're listening to this show by podcast or on YouTube or Krypton Radio or any of those ways, the show notes will be up at shaneplays.com, and I'll have links to various interesting and fascinating things we're talking about. I may, if I remember, put up a picture of Hudson the ASBOdog. So, but we'll see, because he's a handsome devil. And then want to remind folks that the show, if you're listening on the radio on 101.1 FM The Answer, the show does go out as a podcast a few days after the live show. Last week's show is out there and it's on the blog and everywhere else. And it was episode 213, and that's where we talked about Shadowrun, the Shadowrun RPG setting and lore. And it's a great, as we mentioned earlier, it's a great companion podcast to a podcast that Morrus did, episode 64 of his podcast, where they did a review of the new Shadowrun 6th edition. So make sure to check that out. And both of those featured Daryl Mott, the self-proclaimed greatest expert on Shadowrun that's never worked on the game. So, and he really does know his stuff. So, speaking of the podcast, it goes out on the blog, iTunes, Google Play Music, Stitcher, Podbean, SoundCloud, YouTube, and more. And last but never ever least, we're also carried on Krypton Radio. Krypton Radio is sci-fi for your Wi-Fi, KryptonRadio.com. And I'm gonna give a pitch here for both Morris's podcast and mine. If you listen to our podcast and you like them, of course we have Patreons. You can support them on Patreons. But something that helps tremendously, go to iTunes and leave a review. That stuff helps tremendously. So if you like the podcast,
but importantly, with iTunes' algorithm, only 5-star reviews.
Isn't that crazy? Yeah, it's like
4-star review doesn't help.
Isn't that crazy? Yeah, so
a stupid algorithm, but that's how it is.
But leave reviews, on your platforms. Leave good reviews. Hopefully, 5-star on iTunes if you want to help. But that's a tremendous way to help podcasts that you like. If you can't, or for what, nobody has to support this show with a Patreon, but if you want to, I'm glad for you too. All right, but back to our topic at hand. We are talking about SolSpace, the Spartan Gambit, which is both a setting and an adventure for Morris's W.O.I.N, What's Old Is New RPG system that we covered earlier in the show. And it's, to summarize it's not Star Trek, but it's SolSpace is Morris's love letter to Star Trek from way back. He took a creative laxative, and after 20 years, he's finally delivered it. Okay, let me roll that back. After refining it and improving it and making it perfect over the decades, he's finally ready to
drop it.
Let's pinch that off and say let's deliver it. You're going to unveil it. Probably going to get kicked off the radio, FCC. But anyway, it's definitely not that. It's all that's good in role playing and loving Star Trek. And this is going to be one thing we haven't had a chance to talk about yet, really. Although we just briefly mentioned it, it is a Kickstarter that is going to launch March 3rd, and it will go for 1 week. So I would assume until March 10th.
Super quick.
There's actually a thing out there called Quick Starters, and that's what this is. And if I know Russ, this is all ready. This is all done and ready to go. There's no give me the money and then I'm going to go make it. Yeah, I'm looking at it right now. He has a printout. Is that soft cover of it?
It's the actual book.
It's all color. It looks pretty, well designed. It's laid out. It's ready to go. When Russ does a Kickstarter, any sort of crowdfunding, the product's ready. And if there's a PDF that delivers with it, the minute the Kickstarter's over, the PDFs go out. Everything immediately goes to the printers. He delivers quickly. But I am curious why a quick starter on this one instead of I'm not saying it's bad, I'm just curious why.
Mainly because I want to see, it's an experiment, basically. A Kickstarter, a full big month-long Kickstarter is such a massive thing to do. And emotionally, it's a really hard thing to do as well. It's so stressful. And it takes up a quarter of a year, and oh man, it's hard to do. And I want to see if maybe more smaller Kickstarters are a way to go rather than a couple of big Kickstarters. And it might not work. I don't know. It's an experiment. I hope it does, but we'll see.
What is your minimum goal?
Only £500.
Like, what's the easiest? access entry point as far as like, is it just a PDF version? And then, how's it going to work?
For a tenner, you get either the PDF of the Spartan Gambit plus the deck plans for free, or you get the deck plans plus the PDF for free. Whichever one of those two things you want most costs you a tenner, and the other one is free.
And that in US dollars, that's about just under $13.
If you just wanted deck plans of the entire starship, and we have, we've mapped this entire ship with 5-foot squares from top to bottom, every single deck, from the crew quarters to the labs to the bridge to the engineering rooms to the hangar decks to the, even the supply rooms and stuff like that. We've mapped the entire ship. If you want to come along and you just need deck plans for Starship, and you need to use them to print them out yourself, or you want to use them on a virtual tabletop or whatever, they're all completely done, and you'll get those. Every single backer gets those. So,
and if they want a hard copy of the rule book, what are we looking at there?
And it's $20 million, £20. That is in your fine US dollars.
That's roughly $25. So, and that, how many pages is it? And, what all do they get?
70-ish plus the map pack of 30 plus big maps. Well,
they get printouts of the maps?
No, they get 2 copies of the maps, and they get the physical book. The maps are sort of if you want to use a virtual tabletop, because whatever we release, everyone always, one of the first questions you get is, have you got digital copies of the maps for virtual tabletops? They always ask that. So
interesting.
Okay. The game this time. Yeah, got them done.
Yeah, and this will be the time that people are like, oh, we didn't want those. No, I'm just joking. All right, so, and in this book, you get the Spartan Gambit. Spartans are not Klingons, but Spartans take over the USF Copernicus.
Not US.
UFS. UFS. Okay. They take over the Copernicus, which is not NCC-1701. It's something else. And then it's Die Hard in a spaceship. Your team that's been down on a planet doing something comes back, finds that A, the power's off, B, you're lousy with Spartans, C, all the monsters in the lab have unleashed, including a xenomorph and a nanobot swarm. Nanobot swarm. Which that's, in real life even, nanobots are, that exponential growth thing is scary. And then also the antimatter drive has bombs placed around it. Mm-hmm. So it's just another day at the office. Mm-hmm. There's just a couple of challenges. Now, what I don't know, like in SolSpace, which is the setting for WOIN, science fiction setting, and then a science fiction setting, I could say, you can use multiple settings with WOIN. What would the analog to like a phaser rifle be?
A phaser rifle.
Okay, so at any point does the lift doors open on the bridge, and the Spartans look over, and there's a dead Spartan, and written on him says, "Ho ho ho! Now I have a phaser rifle."
Yeah, I guarantee that will happen. It will definitely happen.
So how much of the book or of what they're going to receive, how much of it is adventure versus how much of it is actual just setting information, if people want to expand?
Half. So the first half of the book, you get a shortish introduction to SolSpace, only a few pages. Then you get rules for creating a Union Space Force officer. So what sort of new uses a life path system. So basically, you'll take your officer through the academy, through a branch school, off on a cadet cruise, maybe through a specialist branch school if you want to do, join the psych or. Well,
I have to ask, in the academy, do they go into a simulator called the Kobayashi Malibu?
No, they will.
Crashing up Malibu?
Yeah, no.
Darn.
So you get all the what sort of new careers and stuff for creating a Space Force officer. You get an introduction to the Copernicus itself. You get maps of the entire ship. You get stat blocks for various officers like captains and cadets and medical officers and medics and crewmen and all different types of people that you might find on a starship. And then you get the adventure itself. What
I think we need to do, you know how like the classic Traveler thing is like, this is the free trader Beowulf, and it goes through this, I think we could record a signal that the away team receives right before everything, and it goes, "We've been taken over by Spartans." I guess. Risk is our business. Actually, I really love that episode of Star Trek where he makes the "risk is our business" speech. I don't know. That's the one where the futuristic ancient aliens want to take over their bodies. And he's like, yeah. But this one specifically, he gets to make a great speech where he's like, "Risk is our business, gentlemen." And I really like that. Another thing, talking about the movies, everyone savages The Final Frontier, and with good reason. In a lot of,
it's not very good.
Yeah, and with good reason. But that speech that he makes, because Cybok is like, "I will take away your pain," and McCoy's like, "Heck yeah!" And everybody, and Kirk has a great moment that I think is so important to the character of Kirk.
"Oh, we need our pain."
Yeah, he's like, "Don't take that away from me." He's like, "That is who I am." And I thought that's such a great moment. Now, I'm not redeeming the movie, but that is one of the best Kirk moments out there, in my opinion. So, anyway, but you must come back, the Spartans. There are the xenomorph.
You need to take up a new career.
Have you ever seen where he does the Rocket Man video from that Sci-Fi award in the 70s or 80s? That's pretty. I'll have to remember to put that in the show notes. That's some genius stuff.
Have you seen Nimoy's Hobbit song?
I have, yeah. Bilbo Baggins. Yeah. Yeah, when they're trying to expand their brand, I guess. I don't know. But I love wonderful, cheesy stuff from that from the 70s and the 80s. I have huge love and nostalgia for that.
Yeah,
so,
me too.
I'm not saying it's good, but I got nostalgia for it in a big time. And speaking of Shatner, man, that dude just keeps going. He's out.
He's 80s?
He's late 80s, and he's still working, doing all kinds of stuff. And I keep up with him on Twitter. Either he's hired somebody to do his Twitter, but it's very snarky. I mean, he's opinionated and snarky. When people are like, "Hey, you didn't stop and give me an autograph," they're like, "You owe me an autograph because X." And he's always like, "The only thing I ever owed you was a good performance." And he's like, "I'm sorry I didn't have time to stop." He doesn't pander. So he's kind of an angry old man.
Well, I guess he's got nothing to lose at this stage, isn't he?
No.
I mean, he's done what he needs to do. Never going to take away and whoever else plays the character will never take away from the fact that he is Captain Kirk.
He's legend. I mean, he is cemented as pop culture legend. And he did. Here in the States anyway. People also remember T.J. Hooker, not as much as Star Trek, but they remember T.J. Hooker. They remember Rescue 911. They remember Boston Legal. I mean, he just keeps going. So, and there's a movie out there called Free Enterprise where he plays a version of himself. I don't know if you've ever seen it. Yeah. So, and he ends up, his goal, his dream is to rap Julius Caesar. So at the end of the movie, he's rapping as Julius Caesar. So I don't know. What do I know? Well, that's pretty much it. Unless you have anything else you want to add on the Kickstarter, or if you want to promote. I know you've been putting trailers up. So,
you'll be able to see those on the Kickstarter itself. So I made two just for this. One was the trailer, the main one that will go at the top, Kickstarter, which is short, and it's just like dialogue on a spaceship and some pictures and that stuff. And then lower down, there's one called Mapping a Starship, where it just shows off all of the maps, a lot of maps, like 30 or more deck plans, one of them in detail.
Let's highlight that again, that
It took us nearly a year to do those deck plans.
Who all worked on it with you?
So the art director was Michael McCarthy, and the artist who did deck plans was Meshon Cantrell.
Well, okay, so people, again, I just want to highlight that, for at the entry level tier, you get a lot of just sci-fi maps. If you labs and bridges and this and corridors and
I don't think there's anything quite like it out there. If you go back to like the 80s, there's some USS Enterprise deck plans you can get in a box set. I've got those upstairs. That sort of existed back in the 80s. Don't think currently there's anything in quite at that scale that bigger. Think of like a mega dungeon.
Sure.
It's basically a mega dungeon, but it's a spaceship.
So it's Die Hard in a mega dungeon on a spaceship. I love it. So, all right, great. And that will launch March 3rd, go through March 10th. Jump out there, support this experiment, and get you some cool stuff.
Yeah, be quick. It will, and literally, if you come to me on March 11th saying, "Can I still back your Kickstarter?" the answer is no.
No,
because we will be fulfilling straight away.
That leads me to my final question. If people are just, if somebody's hearing this and this is the first time they've heard of WOIN, their interest is piqued. What is the best way to get WOIN? Where does one go?
WOINRPG.com. WOINRPG.com. Also a link in the navbar there to SolSpace as well. So.
All right, and WOIN is W-O.I.N. What's old is new.
Yes. They go, how do you pronounce that? WOIN? WOIN? I was just like coin or join or anything else that's spelled WOIN.
We had a pretty good riff on the Discord the other day doing some won't you join us or something, and it was bad. I won't do that now. Of course, I just did. So, all right. Well, Russ, as always, thank you for your time. I have to do this. I've got to close this with the bad joke of the week. It has to happen. That's the price that we pay for this radio show. So, are you ready?
No.
Okay, well, good, because here we go. What do Alexander the Great and Kermit the Frog have in common?
Alexander the Great and Kermit the Frog.
Yeah.
Go on.
They both have the as their middle names.
You said you were going to tell the joke.
You actually rubbed your brow as if in pain.
Hurt my head.
All right, man. I'm going to let you go. Thanks so much for joining, and we will catch everybody next time on Shane Plays.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, man. Super glad to have you.
Now learn something about yourself.
No, I refuse. Jim, try to be open about this. About what? I've made the wrong choices in my life? I turned left when I should have turned right? I know what my weaknesses are. I don't need Psylocke to take me on a tour of them. If you just unbend and all... And be brainwashed by this con man? I was wrong. This con man took away my pain. Damn it, Bones, you're a doctor. You know that pain and guilt can't be taken away with the wave of a magic wand. They're the things we carry with us, the things that make us who we are. If we lose them, we lose ourselves. I don't want my pain taken away. I need my pain.
Shane Plays Radio is blessed to have sponsors, and we appreciate them very much. However, did you know that you can also support the show as an individual for as little as $1 an episode? Simply go to patreon.com/ShanePlays.